Okay, thanks for coming, everyone. It's finally sunny, so it's time to start thinking garden. I'm Erin Page. I think some of you already know me. I'm the programs coordinator here, and I am super excited to introduce Christine Segalos of Homegrown Harvest for the third in our four-part gardening series. We had a couple going on in February for prep and start thinking towards spring, and now that it actually feels like spring, it's exciting to welcome them back for a series on organic gardening. So without further ado, this is Christine. Thanks so much for coming.
Am I working? Yes, I'm working. Well, thank you all for coming today. We really appreciate it. My name is Christine Segalos. I'm with Homegrown Harvest. I've been an avid gardener for most of my life. We started Homegrown Harvest in 2012, my partner Mark Alke and I. We wanted to get out from our desk jobs, which we had had for 25 plus years. The last 14 years previous to working at Homegrown Harvest, I was a market research analyst for my brother who ran a hedge fund. And I covered agribusiness, water, and food stocks. And some of which I'm going to discuss with you today is a lot of things that I learned during my course of research, which covering those stocks was over a decade. We started Homegrown Harvest, as I said, in 2012. I became an organic land care professional through the Connecticut NOFA, which is the Northeast Organic Farming Association. I'm also a certified square gardening instructor. Soil. Essentially, all life depends upon soil. And there can be no life without soil, and no soil without life. They have evolved together. These are the words of Charles E. Kellogg, and he recorded them in the Yearbook of Agriculture in 1938. Be it shallow or deep, red or black, sand or clay, the soil is the link between the rock core of the earth and the living things on its surface. It is the foothold for the plants we grow. Therein lies the main reason for our interest in soil. This was recorded back in 1957, again in the Yearbook of Agriculture by Roy Simonson. We find that soil is the great connector of our lives, and the source and destination of all. Wendell Berry recorded this in his 1977 book, The Unsettling of America. This is an illustration form of the soil food web, which shows us why soil is so important. It is vital in the functioning of our planet. It supports agriculture and wildlife. It filters water, stores carbon, preserves and records ecological and cultural past, and supports food. But today we find ourselves in a situation where the U.S. and much of the world's inventory of arable topsoil has been lost due to erosion. Overuse of inorganic nitrogen fertilizers and other farming practices have left the soil depleted. The earth is losing its usable topsoil at a rate of 75 to 100 gross tons per year, meaning we only have about 48 years of topsoil left if we continue at this rate. Food grown in nutrient-deficient soil lacks the nutrients necessary to keep people healthy. The declines in nutritional values in food have been attributed to mineral depletion in the soil, loss of soil microorganisms, along with the changes in plant varieties. Our food system is rapidly losing the ability to produce food with nutrient levels that are adequate to maintain the health of families because of the extreme levels of soil degradation we have experienced here in the United States. I'm sorry, their clicker is behind my clicker. Hello. The alarming fact is that food, fruits, vegetables, and grains now being raised on millions of acres of land that no longer contain enough needed nutrients are starving no matter how much we eat from them. This was in a U.S. Senate document in 1936. So this is not a new problem. Deforestation, overgrazing, and overcultivation have resulted in the degradation of soils in every region of the world. This has become such a worldwide problem that the 68th UN General Assembly has declared 2015 the International Year of Soils. Their specific objectives are to raise full awareness among society and decision makers about the profound importance of soil for human life. They hope to educate the public about the crucial role that soil plays in food security, climate change adaptation and mitigation, essential ecosystem services, poverty alleviation, and sustainable development. They hope to support effective policies and actions for the sustainable management and protection of soil resources, and to promote investments in sustainable soil management activities to develop and maintain healthy soils for different land users and population groups. We hope to help them strengthen initiatives in connection with the DDG process, which is the Sustainable Development Goals and post-2015 agenda. They advocate for rapid capacity enhancement of soil information collection and monitoring on all levels. Soils have been transformed by humans' activity. Physical degradation, removal of natural vegetation. The surface is therefore left to the elements. Biological degradation, the exhaustion of soil. Too many crops are grown on the same area of land. Nutrients are exhausted, and vegetation will no longer grow. Soil is exposed to the wind and rain. The effects of soil erosion include desertification in certain areas. The American West is becoming an increasingly dusty place. The so-called dust emissions, including giant dust storms reminiscent of the Dust Bowl era, have increased in the past 17 years, according to new studies. And yet in other areas, we experience increased areas of water, mud flows and floods. But the result is a loss of soil and biological diversity, resulting in an overall threat to our food security. Food prices rise. This chart actually shows an anomaly that happened if you look over here. This is when we crashed in 2008. But everything bounced back. Economic instability. Consider what's happening right now in California with the droughts. Food prices are going to rise, and they're going to continue to rise. There's no quick fix. Easy. This is something that our country has been battling and trying to figure out for centuries, and we've been losing. Farmers have a way of doing things the same way century over century because it worked, and it's really hard to implement change when you have new people coming in saying we have to try it a new way. And so I think a little bit of what's been going, I mean, obviously the Senate had documents back in the 30s knowing this was happening. We tried to rectify a lot of this by putting in inorganic substances, and as we see, that has not exactly worked for us. The degradation of our soil, or the mining of soil fertility, has led to the degradation of nutrients in our food. The nutritional value of food today harvested is a major issue. Worldwide, the green revolution of the past 50 years has resulted in the use of large amounts of petroleum-based synthetic fertilizers to increase production. They wanted to increase yields. These vast over-applications of inorganic synthetic nitrogen that have been applied to farmland have thus resulted in the destruction of the natural balance of carbon reserves in our soil. With the destruction of moisture-holding carbon, soils have lost the ability to grow healthy plants and hold moisture along with their ability to hold nutrients. The bioavailability of minerals for plant growth has been significantly decreased as a result of accelerated withdrawal of minerals from the soil without additions. So the synthetic stuff helps push along the plants and the yield, but it's nutritionally giving nothing to the plant. So that's an important point to understand. So you can see since the 1950s, because they knew this was a problem, and then all of a sudden they came up with all these petroleum-based and synthetic fertilizers, and we're like, great, here, this is what we're going to do. And they overused them. A lot of things I think have been overused. They just think it's a one-pop pill, let's do it. And the more the better. Roundup, not one of my favorite products at all. I hate it. But Roundup, when it originally came out, if it had been used the way it originally came out, it would have probably been fine. Roundup, if you remember, was originally for like your patios and your for where weeds would come up. It was a one squirt thing. But then all of a sudden they're like, let's put it into they started plowing, spraying fields with Roundup, and then they started sticking it into the actual seed. So some of the things that intentionally were good have been overused, and now we've, with this overuse, we've destroyed the balance, the natural balance of things. And once you do that, it's very difficult to get that back. We can see by this chart that selected vegetables of cabbage, lettuce, and tomatoes and spinach have had huge declines in mineral content during the 20th century. A landmark study recently at the University of Texas studied data from 1950 to 1998 from 48 different vegetables and fruits and find reliable declines in the amount of protein, calcium, phosphorus, iron, riboflavin, vitamin C over the last 50 years. And there's probably more declines in magnesium and zinc, but they didn't study these before 1950. The studies credit the losses in nutritional content to the multitude of agricultural practices designed to improve traits such as size, growth rate, pest resistance, everything other than nutrition. Nutritional content of food today is so vastly different that one study says we'd have to eat 8 oranges today to get the same amount of vitamin A our grandparents got from one. And an adult woman eating 2 peaches in 1951 would have to eat 53 in 2002 to get that same nutritional value. So that's, this really shows you where our food might look great, but nutritionally, it's not there. Today's global food system ensures we can find a ripe tomato any day of the year in any store across the country. Travel time for our food, most of our food is being grown in California. It takes at least 5 days of travel time to get to the East Coast at best, and it's even longer if it's coming from overseas. The average produce makes a trip of 1,500 to 2,500 miles to reach your grocery cart, therefore being harvested well before it is ready. Most fruit and vegetables are 70 to 90% water. Once they are removed from the nutrient source, meaning the plant, the tree, or the vine, they undergo higher rates of respiration, resulting in moisture loss, quality, and nutrition degradation, and potential microbial spoilage. Nutrient availability decreased with a huge environmental cost to transportation as well, adding up to 11% of fuel used in just transporting food from farm to table in 2009. Chemical preservatives have been applied to make produce look better, so by the time you see it in the grocery store, it looks good. While full color may be achieved after harvest, nutritional value, the quality, cannot. Tomatoes that are harvested green have 31% less vitamin C than those who have been left to ripen on the vine. And commercial produce selects their seed varieties for transportability, shelf life, not for nutrient content or flavor. So what can we do about this problem? Well, the The answer's in our own backyard. We know that what makes up healthy soil is that crops get their nutrients from the soil, and healthy soils lead to higher nutrients in your crops. A growing body of researchers support Sir Albert Howard and J.J. Rodale, the founders of the organic movement, who first hypothesized that soils rich in organic matter produce more nutritious food, higher in antioxidants, flavonoids, vitamins, and minerals. Healthy soil is biologically alive and balanced in minerals and carbon content. Soil organisms play an essential role in the breakdown of organic matter and other complex molecules. These activities are also linked to processes that lead to the aggregation of soil particles into a friable soil structure that's beneficial for the growth of plants. The interconnected activities of soil organisms improve soil stability and underpin nutrient cycling on a global scale. It's a fact that healthy soils are responsible for the production of foodborne antibiotics, vitamins, phytochemicals, and amino acids, which are all crucial to human health. The right soil will yield the most nutritious and flavorful food possible. One thing you should know about, we always recommend in your garden to do raised bed gardening. When you're tilling and hoeing the earth, you're disrupting and you're disturbing the microorganisms. So they actually say, well, the least amount of disturbance, the better. So when you're working in raised beds, you don't have to hoe and rototill and all of that. You can actually work the soil with your hands, maybe just a light tool. Yep.
What about all that theory about turn your garden over once a year in the spring?
You should turn your garden over, but
How do you do that then?
you try to do it as, without going as deep, like the rototillers and stuff, all of that stuff is really too harsh for what they're saying, that they will end up destroying some of the microorganisms. So
maybe a compromise, 8 or 9 inches?
Yeah, exactly. And the more it's not a great compromise, but you'll end up doing a lot more by hand. That's going to be much better.
And theories change and evolve too.
Right.
What people thought was good gardening practices, a few years ago, 10, 15, 20 years ago, the way we've always done things isn't necessarily the way it should be done now.
It keeps changing. That's why. So it is hard sometimes when I'm talking to the older gardeners. Like, I've been doing it this way for years. It's like, okay. Decomposition of organic matter is the organic content of soil. And decomposing organic matter increases the carbon content into soil. Composting, it can be very easy as long as you put the right place and system. Right system in place. I found it initially when we were set up our composters outside, and I had all these things, and I didn't have a good system inside, and some of the stuff was still going outside, going to the trash. So little simple things like this in your bathrooms that can hold some of the things that your hair and all of that. I'm going to get into all the little things you can put in compost, but toilet paper rolls. Putting something by the sink. We have that little composter by our sink. And then I have another bigger one because during the winter months I don't want to run outside as much. So setting up the systems inside, it may take a few bins here and there, but once you have those in place, you'll be amazed how much goes into the compost, how little's going into your garbage. Your garbage man's going to love you because he's going to be taking away a lot less. And you're going to be building beautiful compost. Some of the things that you can compost, kitchen scraps are fine as long as they haven't been placed in oils or fats. You need to crush them up, chop them up, shred them up as much as you can. Since the smaller things this helps the composting process. As I said, having bins around the house completely have helped us make it a lot easier. I even have a little bin next to our coffee maker for the coffee grounds that I reuse. So to understand composting, to keep a well-balanced compost, you need to use multiple items. You don't want to use just one or two items. You want to draw from many different sources. I have a handout. If you haven't gotten one, we can give you one afterwards. But the rotted organic matter that you want to collect is a lot easier to remember if you break it down into two groups. You got your brown matter and your green matter. Your brown matter is your carbons. Your green matter is your nitrogen. A lot of people compost, and all they're doing is throwing away kitchen scraps. And then they're wondering why their pile is just a pile of wet kitchen scraps afterwards. And it's not this beautiful black gold that they've been reading about. And it's kind of like baking a cake. There's a little bit of a recipe, and you need to adhere by it. And if you do, you'll get wonderful compost. So for cold composting, and I am going to go over the difference between the various types of composting. But for cold composting, you want a ratio of 3 carbon to 1 nitrogen. You want to make sure that no single brown item makes up more than 10% of the entire mixture. So you want to make sure that you're not just putting in shredded newspaper, or you want to put in some shredded newspaper and some cardboard and some other things. And on the same side, no single green item should make up 20% of that entire mixture. Thus, your kitchen scraps. That should not be the only green going in there. Hot composting, ratio of, that says 3 to 1, it should say 2 to 1. Carbons. Here's a list of carbons that are great to use. Shredded newspapers, cardboard, not with any of the wax-colored stuff. If it's got that stuff, you can't use it. Dried leaves, brown bags, corn cobs, stalks, eggshells, cartons, the paper ones, straw, wood prunings, dryer lint, Q-tips, not the ones with the plastic center, cotton swabs, used tissues, even paper towels that if you just cleaned your hands and you're just wiping off your paper towel and you're throwing it away, don't throw it in the garbage. That can go in the compost. So there's a lot of times where we throw things away and they really can be composted. We recommend using sparingly wood ash, wood chips, pine needles, which can be acidic, and sawdust. These are great for your compost. Just use them in moderation. On the nitrogen side, you've got fruits, vegetables, the coffee grounds add nitrogen, tea bags add nitrogen, seaweed, kelp, plant cuttings, old flowers. Maybe you got some flower delivery. Chop those up, put those in, that will be a nitrogen source. If you have dogs, their fur is a wonderful addition to the composter. It's also a great way to keep deer away. Human hair, feathers. If you grow comfrey, green comfrey leaves are a good accelerator. We don't recommend grass clippings because they are very high maintenance in using in compost. Grass clippings have a lot of weed seeds. So you have to have them dried out properly, and it's just more trouble than it's worth. When we cut our grass, we don't mulch it, we just cut it and just let it do what it does, in place, and that's the easiest way to deal with it. Fresh manures. This is also another source of nitrogen. Fresh manure should not be used directly in the garden, but it is wonderful for your compost. It's an accelerator, which will get the microbial action going. It's a rich source of nitrogen, so you definitely want to make sure that it's balanced out with the carbons, and it has a richness of calcium and a good source of NPK. Animal manure is really good at heating, to increase the internal heat for hot composters. Here's some no-nos. You definitely want to keep these out of the compost pile. Pastas, breads, oily things. Pet food, pet litter. Large branches. You don't want large branches in there. If you're lucky enough to have a shredder, chop that stuff up, put it in and make it as small as possible. Yep.
You mentioned animal manure, but the animals you mention are most all ruminants except for chickens. So dogs and cats that are meat eaters.
You don't use that. You don't use dogs or cats. The manure from dogs, you don't use that. You use on the manures, just let me get, cow manure is fine, because that's highly digested.
They're all grain eaters except for chickens.
Right,
Yeah.
well, and that's, it does add, the nutrients you need, so it's definitely usable. The horse manure can be very weedy, so we tend not to use that. The cow manure, because cows have 4 stomachs, it's highly digested, and so that tends to be, even though they are, it's all up to you. Some people don't use manure at all. Donkeys? I honestly don't know. I would say that would probably go along with horses. If you're using the manure is fine. Hot composting, which I'm about to talk about, helps get rid of those weed seeds and the pathogens that may be, dangerous. That you wouldn't. You certainly don't want to use fresh manure in the garden. Use in the compost. Let it sit. Then it's fine. So cold composting. This is what we tend to do because we're lazy. It's an easier way to go about things. It takes minimal effort. You don't really need any special tools or anything. We use simply something like this, a wire bin, just to contain it. We have dogs, so I don't need them getting into everything. All you do is you put your waste in a pile and you wait. It's the type of composting that it takes a while, so you can't expect anything right away. But it's a, as you go kind of thing. And it's so easy that you don't need to know a whole lot about how to compost. It's just as long as you put the right ingredients in and you do a few things that I'm going to discuss in a second, you'll be able to come out with the compost. The only thing about cold composting is it does not destroy pathogens. So you don't want to put diseased plants in there. So if you think you've got a diseased plant, don't put it in the compost, just chuck it. Unless you're hot composting, which I'm going to discuss. Yep?
How do you keep raccoons out of the open compost piles?
Well, for the most part, you can put a lid on it, depending upon, I've had clients that don't have a problem.
They even open the lids, and we have a closed composter, and we tied it down.
Then you're not putting in enough browns. You're calling them with the kitchen scraps. If you mix it in with enough, and never should the kitchen scraps or any of the nitrogen be on top. You always want to mix that stuff when you put it in. You want to turn your compost pile over, and you want to make sure you've got browns on top. So whether you need to go grab some newspaper if you don't have enough in there, so that definitely helps to keep the critters out. We have about, we have one set, we have a 3 bin, and then we have another composter. We've been fortunate enough not to have that problem. I got 5 dogs, and I got every critter in the world on our property. It really, I think it's more indicative that possibly you've just, it's like the outdoor trash, and you haven't mixed in enough. Hot composting. I'm sure you recognize the black bins or these churny things. They can be kind of scary, depending upon the situation. It's a great, quick way to compost, but you need to be diligent about what you're doing here. The ideal temperature to hot compost is somewhere between 141 to 155 degrees. You need to maintain that temperature for at least a week or more, depending upon the size of what your situation is. You need a compost thermometer to monitor this. And if it level drops or if it gets hotter, you need to turn the pile and add water. And this needs to be done several times. It's a quick way to get compost. You can get compost within 3 to 6 months depending upon the size. So, for the avid, active gardener who's really into this, it's a great way to compost. We've got too much stuff going on. I prefer just the bins on my property and throw my stuff in as it works, and I don't have to be out there watching it all the time. But I have clients that swear up and down by the hot composting, and it does, as long as you reach those temperatures, you will kill the pathogens. So if there's weed seeds or a diseased plant in there, that should be eradicated. Yep.
Which composting do you recommend?
We like to use the cold compost.
For table scraps, though.
For either one.
And
We use the table scraps. Well, I'm going to show you another one for table scraps in a second. But
I get a lot of vegetables that, if I'm prepping my vegetables,
Yep.
my broccoli rabi, half of it goes in the garbage. Can I use that for compost?
absolutely, chop the rest of that up, throw it in the compost. And for cold or, she was asking, she has a cold compost, she's getting her raccoons in it, which tells me that she's not got enough browns in there that are keeping the varmints and everybody away. It's literally just it's like putting out some table scraps for the wild, and they're just waiting for them. So cold or hot, you can use your kitchen scraps. It's just a matter of, the hot is really just more, you got to be out there, you got to take temperature, you got to turn it all the time, and,
Does it matter if it's cooked? Like I find in Tupperware with cooked vegetables in there that got moldy. If I throw that out, should I be concerned about mold developing?
But the cooked vegetables, depending upon what they were cooked in. Like if they were cooked vegetables and if they were cooked in butter, you can't, if you just steamed them and then you didn't have anything extra on it. So you got to stay away from the butters and the oils or any kind of things you might have flavored your stuff up with. So that's why, when you're prepping your salads and stuff and all the stuff that goes to the side after that, put that in the compost. Once the salad's dressed, though, that's got to go into the garbage. So in composting, there are 4 M's to remember, which will help. And that goes for hot or cold. Mix. When you mix, you're balancing the carbons with the nitrogen. You want to mash everything as small as possible. The smaller the better. It accelerates the decomposition process. Moisture. Moisture is very important. People kind of forget sometimes to add a little water. You don't want to add a lot of water. You want it damp. Not too dry, not too wet. Water also helps with the microbial action that's going on. And you need to move the pile. So when you go in to throw your kitchen scraps in, you need to mix it up, mix the browns, throw some, anytime you go to throw some kitchen scraps out, try to remember to grab some browns at the same time, so that at least you're balancing out what's going in at the same time. And you won't, because we're all in the kitchen and we're making so many scraps with our kids, and it's like by the time you know it, you've got more in there. So you need to start thinking about the other things that balance it out. Yep.
Can you use white paper that has been, shredded for confidentiality's sake?
Yeah, as long as it doesn't have that glossy finish on it. Like if it's a regular natural fiber paper and yes, and you've shredded it, yeah, especially particularly if you put it in the shredder. Go ahead, that's fine. Yep.
Is there a concern about the ink in the newspaper?
No. A lot of the inks are soy-based. Most of them are these days. You want to stay away from the glossy. You can't put in magazine stuff. It's the glossy paper that's got the, But our local paper is perfectly fine to go throw in there. New York Times, Wall Street Journal. Vermicomposting. This is another way to deal with your kitchen scraps, and this is the way we choose to deal with a lot of our kitchen scraps. We highly recommend vermicomposting. Worms are a magical nutrition factory. Everything that exits the worm is much more nutrient dense than what entered the worm. So worm casting is easy, it's efficient. It sounds gross, but it's actually a really clean way to set up a composter. And Mark, why don't you come up here? If anybody's interested in learning more about vermicomposting, I highly recommend there's a TED Talk by Mike McGrath called "Everything You Know About Composting Is Wrong." So,
I'll be Vanna White today.
we've brought our own. Our worms are in there, but we just wanted to show you how easy it is to use. This is a vermicomposter. This is the worm factory. And in order to set it up, you got worms. That's all compost. If anybody wants, feel free to come on up and take a look. This is the demonstration part of everything.
That's the bottom thing. This is the active area right now. What's going on? It's just shredded newspaper.
So this is all worm castings.
I just fed them.
This is
earlier
the
today.
nutrition. This is all nutrient dense. Well, they
they're
kind of get in
they're
both
all the way
places.
through, and what happens is you keep wet newspaper on top, and you just feed in every quadrant every couple of days. Now they're all going to hide now because we've opened them up.
So this is what we'd add to our garden and to our
But
compost.
this whole thing now you can see, this is all underneath here. This is all beautiful black gold, as we call it, composting. Now the worms, they'll multiply. The only thing you need to do, even if you forget to feed them, they'll eat this wet newspaper. So you don't have to be.
Does the good stuff fall through?
Yes.
Is that a screen?
Well, it
This-
won't, yes, it is screened, here's what the bottom looks like, and we're about ready with this one here, as you can see, it's getting full. What you'll do, when this one gets full,
You're killing our worms.
they reproduce. So what'll happen very soon is I'm gonna leave this exactly the way it is, but I'm gonna put another layer on it, like this, and the kit comes with about, I don't know, 4 or 5. And I'm gonna put, all thing I'll do here is put more
Here.
shredded newspaper down,
Show them.
wet shredded newspaper, and they're gonna come, they'll migrate up once they get nothing else to eat in there, and I'm feeding here, they'll come up, and they'll go up and down, as they want to. The other thing that's gonna happen is there's gonna be some liquid that's gonna be a byproduct of all of this. And you see there's a tap here on the bottom, you open that up, and that's called compost tea, and that's really great stuff, too.
What's your feeding?
Kitchen scraps.
We just chop up.
All the things that we keep on the side of our, as I said, they will eat the newspaper if there's nothing else for them to eat, and that's even fine for them. But if you see what I've got, what I just gave them today, that's some old carrots. You know, the carrots get rubbery, and if you don't eat them quick enough in the kitchen, that's some carrots, that's some lettuce, that's some asparagus stalk.
We
ends.
took one of our old coffee grinders, because I don't grind coffee anymore, and it's now attributed towards helping.
Eggshells. You can put it in larger form, but the worms will eat it more and process it more quickly, more efficiently if you grind it up. So we've got a little food processor, not even food processor.
Yes, our old coffee grinder.
They don't need much. I won't feed them now again, probably for at least a week or so. And again, as I say, if you forget about it, you go, oh shoot, how are the worms doing? So if the newspaper's wet, you're going to be good. This doesn't smell. We keep this actually in the corner of our dining room.
Yeah. Well, we left it outside last year, and it was too cold.
As long as the temperature is anywhere between, you don't want to get it much hotter than 80 degrees, and as long as it stays above 40. So it usually lives
Did
up.
it freeze if you left it outside?
Yeah,
It would,
the
it
first
would,
year we
it
left
would.
it on our
Well-
screen and porch, it was too cold. So I told them, bring it inside this
In
year, 'cause it
nature,
doesn't smell.
What the worms will do is they'll go deep enough that
Stay warm.
to stay okay. They won't be able to do it here, so you don't want
Right.
it below 40 degrees. So this lives on our screen porch in the summertime, and we don't really worry about it. It's really hot. But then in the winter, we bring it inside, and even the dog, as she said, we have 5 dogs. They don't go
No,
in.
touch it.
They don't go in. So, and they'll eat anything.
Wow, I caught one of the dogs the other day, broke into the cabinet and pulled the food down, and we figured out ate about 30 meals.
So what this thing will do is you can keep stacking it and keep building it, but you're going to want to start using it as well. And worm castings are by far, if you buy compost commercially, you will find that worm castings are the most expensive per ounce if you.
Absolutely.
And any, by far, I mean,
Small bag of worm castings will be,
$15
yeah,
for like
easily.
a 2-pound bag, and you can make this so easily at your house, and the worms just, you buy them from, this guy, somebody's,
Uncle Jimmy.
Uncle Jimmy, the red wigglers.
Red wigglers.
Is the kind of worm. They multiply like crazy, so you buy like a bag of 500 of them, they come in compost, you just dump them in, and it's,
You don't have to put ground in there though.
No, that's for the kitchen scraps. That's exactly, you know, so we use this as the, you know, so all winter
the
long.
newspaper does act as.
Well, yeah, the brown is, yeah, that's,
but-
well, we went away for a week. We just made, you know, we fed them before we left, made sure there was enough water in the thing, and they were fine and dandy.
We have a kitchen composter that has biodegradable bags.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Can you put the whole bag in there, or do you have to empty the bag out, or empty the bags out?
I haven't
put it in
because
there?
we have that too, and I usually check that one out to the compost.
Generally speaking, what you've got, depending on how you do it, if you've got the kitchen scraps in and you've got the biodegradable bag, say that 3 times fast, you're putting in pretty large pieces of like the ends of asparagus or
Yeah.
eggshells or things. And as I said, you really want to try to chop it
Chop
and
it.
grind it up a little because it makes it much easier. The worms will eat it eventually, but
It takes them longer.
It just takes them longer. And the idea here is to have them make this as quickly as possible so you have as much as you can for your garden. So you want to help it along a little bit if you can.
How long does it take for them to make a tray of that?
It depends, but
They did,
a couple of months.
yeah.
Did you say no used coffee grinds?
No, use,
Used
yes,
grinds.
use the used coffee
And
grounds.
the other question I have is, what about the seaweed that you see on the beach?
That's great.
Isn't that great?
Oh, yeah, we go down to the beach with like 5-gallon things of stuff, and I pick up seaweed and shells.
We take
and-
oyster and clam
like,
shells.
yeah, and
and
smack
hammer
'em up.
down. That's great calcium.
Yeah,
for our
it also makes your garden more friable and stuff. It helps with
Friable, by the way, means loose,
loose.
not putting it in the fry. Well, I was very confused by that term at first. So sometimes we throw it around.
I'm sorry.
Your worms can come it up and you can take the trays from the bottom and put it in the
Yep.
vegetable garden?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
And there'll be probably a couple of worms that haven't made it up, but that's great because they're good in your garden too. So you want them there.
So vermicasting, as you can see, it's a lot of people get grossed out when I don't want to deal with worms, and that just sounds really disgusting. But it's a really clean and neat way in order to deal with composting. And as I said, I mean, there are little nutrition factors, so you can't really beat it.
We sell all this stuff, by the way.
Yes, we do. Composting, you need to think about it as an imitation of nature, and it does take time. But if you simply just composted shredded leaves alone, it would be a lot better than just blowing them off your property. If you just made them a pile and then threw coffee grounds on that leaf pile to help things get going, it would be 10 times better than paying the landscapers to blow them off your property. Mother Nature has been dropping her leaves for centuries, and it's been a natural compost for our forests and natural areas. Yep.
What's the cheapest, easiest way to shred your leaves if you do not have a lawn, and so you don't have a mulching lawnmower? Do you have to buy a big
Shredder.
big shredder thing?
Yeah, that's the best way, you know. I mean, you don't have shredding. When I talk, it all goes to making things small. If you didn't shred your leaves, it would still happen. It would just take longer. During the we blow our leaves into our woods and we just leave them there. I don't have 12 feet of leaves back there, you know. So they'll decompose over time. You know, mix it up. And as I said, like if you don't have a shredder but you have a leaf pile, you have it in an area or you put it in a compost thing, and if you add the coffee grounds, they'll act as an accelerator to help. And if you don't drink coffee, go to Starbucks or any of the ones in town, they'll be more than happy to give you their used. Yep.
On comfrey, it's fairly easy to grow, I found, but the deer like to eat it.
So that, yeah.
Once it's there, you're never getting rid of it.
That's it. Thank you for. It's a great accelerator, but some things have drawbacks because they become deer attractors.
What was the item?
green comfrey leaves. Comfrey it's a type of plant, but it can attract deer. There are other accelerators that you can get or use if you feel the need. I don't use accelerators for the most part, other than my coffee
But
grounds.
that's also the reason for using things like pet hair and human hair and things that are actual natural deterrents to deer. They don't like it. It smells like human, so
Right.
you mix that stuff in.
Yeah, we've been very successful if you have problems with deer. Little small burlap sacks stuffed with dog hair and human hair. Stick those around your garden, or I had a container that was getting attacked. I had a strawberry container that was getting attacked, and we threw some of those in there. And
Didn't help from the dog attack.
no, lost that to the 14-month-old puppy.
We caught her on our video surveillance jumping into a container full of strawberries. It was heartbreaking.
It's really, really bad. We use a combination of ingredients when we mix together our soils at Homegrown Harvest for raised beds. Compost is the food, the nutrient source that feeds the growth of the plant. We include peat moss, which is partially decomposed remains of plants, most commonly known as sphagnum moss. We sometimes use core, coconut fibers, as an alternative to peat. I like to use the core in containers in particular, because if core gets dried out, it can be regenerated with water, whereas peat moss, if it dries out, is going to repel water.
How do you feel about sweet pea as hot dressing?
Fine. That's not too much, but yeah, it's perfectly fine. Both the sphagnum, peat moss, and the core help to retain water and keep soil loose. We also include vermiculite, which is a rock that's mined and heated into small pieces that have nooks and crannies that help hold water and nutrients in soil. I'm sure on the market you've seen perlite. Perlite's used a lot. It's a lot like vermiculite. The only difference is it doesn't hold nutrients. So I prefer the vermiculite over that. Both help keep the soil friable and less dense. Vermiculite also adds a little potassium and magnesium into the mix, but not enough to alter the pH levels. It's crucial to set up a soil that has all these additions to them. This way you are setting up for a nutrient-enriched environment that, I really wish my clicker would come back, that would add to your vegetables. And we add the worm castings as well. By growing even a small amount of vegetables, you can boost your vitamin and mineral intake significantly. There's no travel time involved, and you've controlled the environment in which it's grown. You save water. Home gardening is much more efficient than commercial farming practices. When vegetables are grown in your own garden, in soil that's enriched with compost, you pick them when you need your veggies minutes before a meal. They're ripe and ready and have the highest nutritional content. Vine-ripe red peppers have 30% more vitamin C than green peppers, and vine-ripened tomatoes have more vitamin C as well as antioxidants and lycopene than harvested prematurely, which happens on a daily basis in commercial agriculture. So a few summary points about soil. Healthy soils are the basis for healthy food production. Soils are the foundation for vegetation, which is cultivated and managed for feed, fiber, fuel, and medicinal products. Soil is important as it supports our planet's biodiversity and hosts a quarter of its total. Soils help to combat and adapt to climate change by playing a key role in carbon cycle. They store and filter water, improving our resilience to floods and droughts. And it's important, because people don't realize this, the soil is a non-renewable resource. Its preservation is essential for food security and our sustainable future. We are part of the earth, and it is part of us. And what befalls the earth befalls all the sons of the earth. Chief Seattle said that way back in 1852. We appreciate everybody coming today. I'll take more questions that you might have. Yep, in the back.
We had some big oak trees come down on our property, and we had as much as they could mulch it,
Yeah.
I guess, or chop up, and just left piles here and there. I created some paths through our property, and, you know, am I doing something bad by putting too much of these?
You want to make sure, well, with mulches and stuff, particularly, you know how you mulch around trees and everything, you don't want to, if you're putting it in your garden beds and stuff like that, you want to make sure that you're not putting too thick of a layer, particularly since you sound like you've got a lot on your property. When you look at a tree when it's got the fresh mulch around it, you don't want to see what's called volcano, where it kind of starts to creep up the tree. It really shouldn't, there shouldn't be this like spreading. You want to, because that can strangle the tree. You want to have about 2 inches of mulch down in all areas, 2 to 3 inches.
Leave it sit in piles like you're talking about, you know, eventually that's gonna turn into something, you know, that you could use. You're gonna wanna add some other things to it, because it's, you know, any single item, for composting is one-dimensional, so. And that goes even if you're buying commercial compost. All commercial compost you're gonna buy, you know, even if you go to Home Depot or somewhere like that, is going to be, it's a byproduct of some other industry, which by itself is not a bad thing, but it can be very one-dimensional, so you want to read the ingredients. So, you know, we're very lucky in town that we have a big recycling program and mulching program that I hope all of you are aware of, that, you know, your tax dollars are going to. They spend a lot of money on this. They do it over on off Labram Road, and that's where the mulch used to be. But it's so good that we used to get contractors coming in, not only from town, but from out of town, and filling up pickup trucks full of this stuff, taking it off to clients and selling it to them. And we said to Rob Malazzi,
I made a big mistake one day.
But this is great stuff. You pick it up now at the transfer station.
Yeah.
But it's great stuff to use in your garden as part of the compost that you're going to be making. So you're doing exactly the right thing. Just it's going to take a little while.
I take buckets of that and put it with my coffee beans, peat moss, and then I buy big things of manure and just turn it.
That's perfect.
We've grown gardens strictly with the compost from New Canaan, and it works great. But you can make it much better by augmenting it with things, but it's perfectly acceptable to do just with that.
Yep.
If you have pine needles within the leaves that come down and you shred them, is that can you do that?
Yeah, I mean, it's not gonna, just remember the pine needles are gonna add acidity to, you know, your mixture. I have one of my gardens, right, actually is underneath one of my pine trees, our white pines. And it's been okay. I'm always very like,
Naturally, we can't control it.
yeah, I just, when it gets to be a little bit too much, I will end up picking up the top ones and throwing them into the other composter. Yes?
If you're growing vegetables in your garden, should you be testing for the pH?
Yes.
And then how do you adjust it?
Well, your pH is gonna, you know, if you do a soil test, it's gonna show you where you're deficient. And then depending upon what that source is, that you know, maybe you're needing some more nitrogen or phosphorus. It depends on what you're looking for.
Like if you grow a variety of vegetables, like 2 or 3 different kinds, like say peppers, tomatoes.
Are you
green
adding
beans,
compost every year?
just the soil from the town.
Okay, so you are replenishing compost every year, because if you're not doing that, you have to realize that after every season, it's been stripped of the nutrients. Because
Correct me if you disagree with this, but my observation would be, as long as you're replenishing the compost with a multidimensional compost material on an annual basis, or when you're taking out a certain crop, because seasonal crops. So if you've harvested your lettuce because the spring is over and now it's the hot summer, and we know we're not going to grow lettuce in the hot summer, then you put a couple of handfuls in of some new compost and then plant whatever it is you're going to plant. You know, that's going to be fine. The other thing is, which Christina's talked about in other lectures, is about having a polyculture where you're growing different things that help one another on a soil level, and also not growing the same thing in the same place in your garden.
crop
year after
rotating.
year, so crop rotation.
do you practice crop rotating?
I only have.
You know what, even in the tiny, because I have gardens for our clients that are 4x4s. And so I try to move around like where their tomatoes are. If I've planted, say if this is the 4x4 and I planted the tomatoes, you know, here last year, I'm gonna try to move them somewhere else so they're not exactly, you know, we put the compost, you know, and the amendments in and we mix it all up and everything. The thing is though, even in the small conditions, you know, it's even better just to not plant exactly where you were because everything's going right down in center. You're gonna build up possibly soil-borne diseases and stuff. And so even just moving it a little bit within your garden will help as opposed to as if you were not to. But always replenish the compost because that's your nutrient source. The other stuff that we discussed in our mixture, we only replace the compost, the vermiculite and the peat. That's the one time we put it in, and then depending upon if we're doing succession plantings, I'll add some more compost after I've pulled something out. So during the season, I'll end up adding a little bit of compost if I'm doing succession, and we always end up doing succession plantings. Yep.
So if you have one of these bins and you have a lot of deer, we don't have any raccoons, I guess you have to cover it just to be safe.
If you feel that you know you're gonna, again, if you're mixing, there really shouldn't be anything in the compost. Your kitchen scraps should be nicely covered. You know, when you mix it in, always have that stuff on the bottom if you're starting, and put the browns on top.
You want a pitchfork next to it.
Yeah, pitchfork. That's the only kind of tool you need, really, for your. I mean, because we also have compost piles that are just in certain areas. I have clients that just have areas of their yard where they build these berms, and they're just using it, so they've got nothing to keep critters or deer. And it's just in the way they're turning their piles and in the way that they're mixing it that they have not had the problem. Again, if you're finding a lot of critters coming into your composter, probably there's not enough brown in there, and certainly not on top. Yep.
And again, the human hair, the dog hair.
Oh yeah, that all helps.
That helps keep them away.
Eating the worms too?
Are the
Or
raccoons?
Are they just going for the food?
They're just going for the food.
And after you turn your soil in the spring, should people be putting, like buying worms and adding worms?
You can, absolutely. If you want to add worms in, you know, there's nothing wrong with Uncle Jim. You could buy red wigglers online. They'll send you like 1,000 to 3,000, whatever. They're not that much, and you can. That's one of my things that you can add live.
If you've got a healthy soil culture in your garden and you turn it a little bit, you should see worms.
You know, but if you're worried about it, there's nothing wrong with adding worms, you know, to it. There's a lot of you can add beneficial insects. I mean, there's things you can do to bring in the beneficials and stuff.
People go nuts. They buy ladybugs. They do all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we find that if you plant your garden with a combination of herbs, flowers, and vegetables, which is the polyculture that we build when we plant gardens, that they will come naturally. The only thing that I've built on my property was a solitary bee mason house to kind of give solitary bees an area to go. And that's just using old crock, you know, logs and ceramic things that I kind of put in a kind of box area off to the property, and the insects go nuts, and solitary bees love to live in there, and they come and they pollinate my garden.
None of this should be a lot of work if you do it right. You know, people sometimes think, "Oh my gosh, what you're talking about? It sounds like it's so much effort." It really isn't. If you it's the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid. You know, you just do these things. That's why we like the cold composting rather than the hot composting. We're not out there turning it. We're not out there having to do all these other things.
Yeah, there's a lot to think about. That's why I'm like, cold compost, as you go, throw it in. Wait, there's a question back there.
Isn't there a recent ecological issue with using peat?
There have been issues about using peat, which is why sometimes we suggest using the core if people take issue with it. NOFA, which is the Northeast Organic Farming Association, still says organically it's fine to use peat. I think you have you've talked to the guys up in Canada.
I mean, the fact of the matter is peat bogs are renewable, but some people have a little bit of a problem with it. And if you do use coir.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's still okay. Excuse me?
It's, if you go to buy peat moss,
Peat moss?
it's core sort of sold the same way, it's the same.
Yes, you can get way core is sold. It comes in these bags and it'll be compressed.
Yeah, it's compressed into a brick.
So is peat, right?
Yeah, but there's like the compression that's in
Not
that
always.
core. You get a lot, you know, the bags that you get are probably about this high and that wide. And there's a lot, you know, I sit there and I break that up and that thing becomes
It's
much
soaked,
bigger.
right?
You get it, yeah, you get it wet. And once it gets wet, you know.
So if you
Go ahead.
start off, if you do the peat moss and the vermiculite,
Vermiculite.
and then kind of do that in your soil and turn over just a little bit, and then do the local compost from the Canaan, you're probably off to a decent start.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're off to a decent.
You're off to a great start. And then, you know, if you throw some worm castings in there or get some, you know, you're all good.
And if you're not doing composting at home, because obviously we build gardens, not commercially, but for other people. So it's not possible for us to compost enough ourselves to use for our customers. So we use commercial products. And one of the things that I would recommend if you wanted to do that is there's a company called Coast of Maine that makes a lot of really great products. You can get them, and you can buy it almost everywhere. And a lot of it is byproducts from the commercial agriculture and fishery industries up in Maine. So you'll have things like lobster shells, clam shells, blueberries,
Everything.
and a really great thing, I guess, and I'm giving a shout out to a place up in Fairfield. We know Lee Ganem. I don't know if anybody knows Ganem's Nursery up in Fairfield.
How do you spell that?
Ganim.
Ganim. There's a Coast of Maine makes a product that they only allow what they call master garden centers to sell, and there's only a few of them. There's only one in the area, which is Ganem's, and it's called Bumper Crop. And this stuff is fantastic.
Oh yeah, you're growing vegetables. Bumper crop is.
It's got multiple different types of. It's got worm castings. It's got chicken manure. It's got.
It's all
brown
balanced.
leaves. It's all organic. It's got sphagnum peat.
Yep.
It's pretty much a one-stop thing. We add other things to our stuff, but if you only use any one thing, you can get that from them, and I highly recommend.
If you're an organic grower or gardener, and you want or need something, whatever it may be, I recommend as a source is OMRI, OMRI. They're the Organic Management Review Institute. Don't sell products. They're like the Consumer Report of organic.
It's kind of like UL listings for approval.
Right. So if you're not sure, it's kind of like, you know, when we go to the grocery store and some stuff says it's USDA organic and some stuff that says it's natural. We're not sure what it is. This will tell you and make sure that the product you're using is organic. So I highly recommend it. It's omri.org. So for anything, pesticide, anything, they're a wonderful reference to use for organic growers. Yep.
When you're talking about composting, is it better if you're not growing a winter garden, put it down in the spring or put it down in the winter?
You could start it any time, really.
Are you putting it into your garden,
Right.
or making it?
No, putting it into your garden.
Oh, putting it-
amending the soil. Is it better to have it lying there over the winter or put it back in the summer?
It doesn't
in the
matter.
spring?
You can put your compost if it's ready.
Right.
You know, and you want to put it down in the fall. There's nothing wrong with putting it down in the
But
fall.
there's no advantage to that.
No. But unless you just like, you know, I might get so busy, let me put this down now. As long as you're not growing anything in it, it's not going to lose its nutrients. I would suggest putting it, leaving your garden uncovered, like just leaving it bare soil during the wintertime, you do a little bit damage, even if you're not growing anything in there. It even helps to put a little bit of small hay cover or whatever on top of it, particularly if you are going to put any nutrients in
Because of
there.
erosion or something?
Yes, it's because of the erosion and everything. So it just helps, and it's very easy to pick up. In a small layer, you wouldn't even need to put anything. You could just mix it in the springtime. But leaving open soil between the wind and the rain and the erosion and stuff, it's just better to cover it. Are there any more questions? Well, we really appreciate everybody coming out today. Thank you so much.
What's your next program going to be on?
We're going to be here Tuesday night, and we're going to be discussing planting a garden.
Oh, thank you.
So Tuesday night at 7 o'clock.
Great, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, I had, well, I was out there one day, and I had a huge argument with this guy who was
Hot
a
compost.
landscaper.
Because it's an
And I literally went up to him and I was like, excuse me, but what property is that going to? And he was like, you know, kind of confused with it.
Yeah,
And he was like,
you know, you could, but you'd have to you may have to custom build something.
excuse me.
They make a thing called hardware
Where
cloth,
is this going?
which is
Just give me the
like
name of
chicken
the
wire,
client
but
that
it's
you're
much,
taking
much
this
thicker.
to.
Even if you got something like that, and just wind it around, that's something the rats could improve. Well, they can't get in. If they can't get in it, they're, you know, it's not like they're gonna keep coming and looking at it and watching it. After
It's a great place to go.
And they're not that stupid.
Free
They're
and
gonna go out,
and
they're
I'm
gonna
like,
go find a
excuse me.
McDonald's down the street.
Are you a Decatur resident?
I was gonna ask you, I don't know.
Okay, great.
Sorry.
So, does Norfolk do any of
Very
this?
interesting.
I don't know, you know what? You should check, Norfolk's got some wonderful community gardens
I
and
know.
stuff.
If we're waiting
Call
for,
them
what
and
do
see
you
if
do
they
with
know
the,
a source.
very
Because I'd be kind of surprised.
Or the
If you
worm?
had to spend a lot
But from what
of
you said, like a.
How long are you away for?
Compost, at least just to start.
Yeah.
3 months?
But I haven't, you know, we had compost in, but my garden
Yeah.
destroyed, so, so,
restart it.
we have to
Yep.
Yeah,
I
but-
start like, bought me the
Um,
place with
Oh,
this.
probably
absolutely,
not,
for this
no.
year.
Yeah, but, you know, I wanted to.
You know, and in your case, I mean, worm castings are good no matter what, but if you can't make them yourself, buy them.
Yeah.
You know, they sell them commercially in bags, and it's good stuff.
No, I know.
We mix it, as I said, we
Well, that was the,
building
that
codes,
was the,
we don't,
well, that
can't
was the
make enough in
problem.
that thing for all that we do, so we buy them, we buy worm castings.
So let me ask you a question on the building environment.
Gone, yeah.
So
I
how
have
do you
a
approach it?
couple,
What's
thank
your
you,
approach?
one, I belong to the University of America, and I'm on the board of the.
Yeah, and then we talk, you know, aspirationally about, you know, what you'd like to eat, what you'd like to grow, you know, how big your family is, how much you need, and we'll talk about, you know, quite often,
Secondly,
part of the
really
problem
like to do that.
is that
So we.
traditionally people
in our youth,
remember their gardens from
as
whatever
a
their grandparents had, you know,
so
it was basically a mini
workshop
farm,
a couple
you know, it was a
of
row of
Yeah,
this and a
I
row of
did.
that, and that was,
Right.
when you talk to
Two
people about,
things.
well, why do you
Garden?
garden that way, they'll sort of give you a
This
blank
was
look
just
and
in the
say, well, that's the way we've always
And
done it,
this is,
you know,
they
and,
had
and there's
already
so
had
many
some
reasons not to
already
do that.
started.
Okay.
Not least of which is,
So
you know, the two
this
things
is
people don't
like
like about gardening,
time
Yeah.
or complain about
stuff
is
like that,
all
but I
the
have